All right. The meeting to order. This is the time and the place set for the March 9th, 2023 meeting of the City of Boise Ethics Commission. Clerk, can you take roll for us, please?
Church.
Present.
Howarth.
Present.
Rourke. Zimmerman. All present.
Thank you. Would assume everyone's had a chance to review the minutes of the January 12th, 2023 meeting. If we have any comments or suggestions on those, and if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes from the January 12th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Church.
Yes.
Howarth.
Yes.
Rourke.
Aye.
Zimmerman. All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. We will move on to special business. So HR, I believe, has an update for us regarding some recent appointments or appointments yet to be made.
Hi, thank you. Yes, HR would like to recommend that Addison King be reappointed as the employee member of the commission.
Thank you. Just need to check. Do we have any other recommendations?
No, we do not.
All right. Well, we'd entertain a motion to approve that appointment.
Motion to reappoint Addison King to a 2-year term as the employee member of the Ethics Commission.
Happy to second that motion.
Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Church.
Aye.
Howarth.
Aye.
Rourke.
Aye.
Zimmerman. All in favor, motion carries.
Get on up here. As a result of that vote, Addison King is reappointed to a 2-year term, which will end in February 2025. And again, fills the seat as the employee member on the Boise City Ethics Commission.
I move to elect Addison King as chair of the Ethics Commission.
So already got a year under his belt. I'd second that. We get a roll call vote, please.
Church.
Aye.
Howarth.
Aye.
King.
Aye.
Rourke.
Aye.
Zimmerman. All in favor, motion carries.
Welcome back. Take the floor.
Thank you, commissioners. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your trust. I guess next on the agenda is vice chair. So we have any nominations or?
I move to nominate Commissioner Howarth as vice chair. Continuing.
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Roll call vote.
Church.
Aye.
Howarth. King.
Aye.
Rourke.
Aye.
Zimmerman. 4 in favor, 1 abstained, motion carries.
Welcome back to you as well. So now that we have positions back in order, do we need to introduce Mr. Zimmerman? Mr. Zimmerman, do you want to say anything or tell us a little bit about yourself?
I think
Microphone.
Push the button.
Yeah, like I said, I just have been looking for an opportunity to serve Boise, and this opportunity presented itself, and I'm looking forward to learning how I can help serve.
Welcome.
Welcome again. So makes it 5 and we are short. We're still 1 commissioner, or is that full? Okay, that's it. Patrick?
Hello, commissioners. As with common practice, we omit things that are clearly not relevant, things that are kind of spam emails that we'll receive, those sorts of things. And then also we don't go into too much detail on travel requests because those aren't really ethics issues. So I'll just omit those from the summary, but the only email, the noteworthy email from the ethics hotline to mention is we received an email from a reporter at the Idaho Statesman, and one or more of you might have also received some kind of email personally from this individual, but they were just asking about what the avenue might be to ask questions to a member of the commission. And our response was to direct this individual to essentially the commission's ordinary process, let them know that it's not typical, not procedurally okay to just meet individually with the commissioner about official business, and that if they wanted to pursue their question in a formal capacity, they were free to do so. They responded to say they didn't intend to submit a formal inquiry, and that was the end of that. So I think they were looking to just pick someone's brain, but we directed them to the right policies and procedures, and they chose not to pursue it. And that is basically the end of that summary. Thank you. And as far as the hotline, since that's next on there, we didn't receive anything to the hotline since the last meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. So I guess we move on to the advisory opinion 2302. That's the Boise K-9 Foundation support.
Afternoon. I am Officer Wayne with the Boise Police. This is my exuberant partner, Sep. I'm here on behalf of not only the K-9 unit, but the K-9 Foundation to kind of get some clarification. There is the K-9 Foundation is actually ran by the Idaho Community Foundation. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. Its main purpose is to help support the K-9 unit and anything that might be outside the budget of the police department. And so extra equipment or gear, stuff like that, anything to help the K-9s do their job, the handlers to do their job safely. My goal since joining this unit about 4 years ago is to increase the visibility of the foundation. I don't know that it's well known. So my goal is to create a social media page, because we all know that's a good way to reach out to people. And take photos of the officers with their dogs, have stories of the background of the dog, anything to kind of engage with the community. But we just want to make sure and run it by and see if, because obviously any fundraising duties, that kind of stuff would be done off duty. However, if we want to get pictures on officers and the dogs, it's going to be obviously on duty or in uniform, stuff like that. So we just kind of want to, I guess, get the parameters of what that might entail. Secondarily, not as important as the visibility, but down the road, we're also looking at maybe creating calendars and doing sales of the calendars to benefit the fund as well. So I guess that would be I don't know if we have to do a separate, I know that wasn't in the email, but address that as well.
Does any of the commissioners have any questions or?
I had a question. Are canines considered employees?
Yes, I believe so.
So the question about 1-8-5 is a Boise Police Department employee receiving money or anything of value? And so I suppose that would be the question. Are the K-9 employees
Right.
receiving something of
And
value?
I guess I should answer without fully having the background of that. Like my initial thought is a yes, just by conversations I've had. However, I know that the foundation has existed for at least 10 years and have had donations rolling in that whole time. So I don't know if it just hasn't come up or if I am wrong in saying yes. So I'm fully possibly wrong on that. You might legal would obviously know if that's an employee or not.
Do you know if, I would assume no, but
Yeah, I think no. And also, it looks like the fundraising would be on behalf of the foundation only. So I'm not sure it would implicate that provision any. There would be nothing going directly to any employee or even the canines directly is what I understand from the request.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes.
So I noticed that there is a link on the BPD site to the foundation with a donate here button. So I suppose one of my questions is whether the city has a social media policy and what the implications might be relative to that. That falls outside the scope of our authority and purview, but I think that might be germane to the conversation.
Me? So my understanding is as long as there's not a city logo involved in it, that was the direction I got approximately 6 months ago before we went down this road. Obviously, the name of the foundation is Boise Police Canine Foundation. So that's going to be in there. It's going to be tied to the police, but would not have logos or other than obviously the uniforms that are in the picture, stuff like that. But
Right.
as far as the logo on the page or anything like that it'd be left out of that.
Mhm. Yeah, and it occurs to me that care should be taken, I suppose, to differentiate, right, the foundation and that particular fund from the city and from the activities of BPD. I mean, it's a little blurry, I think, on the BPD site, which is not to criticize the cause or anything like that, but if this does move forward, I think that will be an area of particular care to take.
My question is would there be any donations for certain dogs or it all goes into?
It goes to a general fund under the community foundation. You can specify obviously to the Canine Foundation. I'm sure you could put a note if you wanted it to go a certain space. For example, when Jardo was killed in 2008, I believe, we got an influx of donors from there, and a lot of people would say this is for Jardo's, memory of Jardo or whatever. So I'm sure you could put a line in there, but it's not. I don't know that you can go, I want this X number of dollars to go to that dog. Like, it just goes to the fund.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Chair, I had another question. I want to second what Commissioner Rourke said, that on the social media site, there ought to be language indicating that it is not at all associated with Boise Police Department. But also, I was looking at other foundations similar to this for canine units nationally, and there are boards of directors. Is there a board of directors for this foundation? And if so, are they officers or volunteers, or how does that work?
So I don't know if the actual term is board of directors. There's I want to say it's advisory or some committee where that kind of helps determine where the funds are going. My understanding of the way it works is if a request for money is made, it's made by the lieutenant of the canine unit and then ran by this advisory board. And I believe it's the lieutenant of the unit, the captain of the unit, and then there's probably the deputy chief, I believe, and a civilian. I'm not sure of her exact title, but there's, I believe, those four for sure. I can gladly look at more for you, but like I said, I was kind of thrown into this today. So
Mr. Chair, just to confirm, so the advisory board is made up of Boise Police Department employees plus a civilian?
correct.
Okay.
And the civilian is a PD employee as well. She's just not sworn.
And they serve,
And there might be a board of directors higher. Like I said, it's kind of a weird thing because the foundation itself isn't a nonprofit. It's under the umbrella of the community foundation, which is the nonprofit. So as far as they might have a board that then will umbrella over the foundation, if that makes sense. But I know the actual foundation itself isn't, we haven't filed the paperwork for it to be a nonprofit.
yeah, no, I understand that. The community foundation is the 501c3 number. Okay.
I would also advise the commissioners or the committee, if there's any unclear answers, we can always revisit this, right? Put it on the next agenda if you don't get the answer to the questions you're looking for. Or do we have any consensus that this is okay?
I just have one more question, and that is, it's very explicit that at least in the request for advisory opinion, that the use of the funds is directed toward equipment and training and, keeping the dogs up to date and equipped to do their job. Is, to the extent of your knowledge, is the budget for the canine unit and those activities within BPD's budget such that there is ever any opportunity to, to sort of move some fungible funds one direction and backfill with the foundation? And really the point of my question is sort of encapsulating those extra expenses and making sure that there isn't any opportunity for any kind of shell game activity, if I might call it that.
Right. I unfortunately don't have the definite answer. My understanding of the way the funds have been used since I've been aware of the foundation for the last 4 years is it's nothing that was going to be covered by the operating budget. It's excess, extra items, so to speak.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, to that point, would the people on the advisory board know the budget?
Yes. Like I said, Lieutenant Ransom was supposed to attend. He had some obligations, so I'm here. Unfortunately, he would have a lot more answers for you.
Totally
Like I
understand.
said, I'm more than willing to find this stuff out. And as Addison said, revisit it another time if I could get those answers for you.
Thank you.
So let's put it back on the agenda. Can we do that?
I can do a draft on what we have if you want, and if it's not sufficient, we can have it on the agenda, I think, as a just in case.
All right. With what we've learned, I'd move to direct staff to draft an advisory opinion on 23-02. We can revisit it after that.
Second?
Roll call vote.
Church. Howarth.
Aye.
King.
Aye.
Rourke.
Aye.
Zimmerman. All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we can move on to the request for advisory opinion 23-03. Application award of ARPA funds to employee business. Do we have anybody representing?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Joshua Levitt. I am the current grants compliance analyst for the city of Boise. And I also co-own a small business, a small Boise-based business called Onus Training. Recently, the city implemented a small business grant application process through the ARPA fund. Its purpose was to relieve some of the negative economic impact placed on small businesses in Boise. And I, as a owner of the business, applied for the grant. However, I also have had an active role in the grant process in development at the city level. And so I'm seeking advisory opinion on the conflict of interest in that situation.
There isn't anything else to add, commissioners. Do you have anything?
Mr. Chair, just a clarification, you said there that the funds were for economic issues related to the pandemic for Boise, but I note here that the business is in Nampa. and that the funds were through the United Way of Treasure Valley. So I just wanted to, for the record, this is for the Treasure Valley, not for Boise specifically.
Commissioner, no, this is, so the business address has changed over time because we've moved the business. The business is now a Boise-based business with a Boise address. The Treasure Valley United Way is they are serving as the mechanism of payment to the small businesses. So they're City of Boise funds that get funneled through Treasure Valley United Way to the small businesses.
You are the owner of the business?
That is correct, Chair.
I guess my next question would be, how did you come to apply for the grant?
I went through the same application process as all applicants through an online portal that allowed for the specific criteria to apply just like all other applicants.
And I didn't see a lot on the inquiry as far as onus. Can you explain onus again, or what does the acronym stand for?
ONUS is just it's a training. It's not an acronym. It's a business kind of motto. We manufacture and distribute through sales, training bags for athletes, firemen, anyone who does any sort of pack training or weighted training. That's the company's main source of revenue.
Okay, how do you feel about applying for the grant before coming to the committee?
Yes, Chair.
Because it was
So
actually caught by analysts, right? The inquiry was submitted by an analyst, right?
I am the analyst.
Oh, you submitted it.
Yes, I did.
Okay, and
Yes.
I stand
And-
corrected.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm happy to answer the question if you'd like, but
Yes, go ahead.
yes. Yeah. So my involvement with the process has been through a variety of responsibilities and roles, just mainly in advisory. As a grants compliance analyst, a lot of my job is to just make sure that our grants processes follow federal and state guidelines, and making sure that all of that is in place. I was also involved in some of the back or front end, I guess, development of the grant. However, the development of the grant began prior to me becoming a city employee and working on this. All of the final decisions regarding the scoring criterias and all of that were made by mayor's office personnel. I have that none of the applications to my knowledge have officially been awarded, to include my application. I have recused myself of all scoring of applications, as well as any continued conversation regarding this since submitting my request for advisory opinion. And that's where we stand today.
So you've recused yourself. Is there anybody who reports to you or that you have influence over in their job that's going to be involved in that process?
No, Vice Chairman, I have no one reports to me, and I'm not as up to date as I was obviously on the process now. My understanding is that there's a variety of personnel that are grading the applications from different departments within the city.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, question. The rubric that is used to determine these grants, is that open knowledge? Because you would have specific knowledge as to what the grading criteria, and excuse my term there, the grant criteria, that maybe another person applying for this would not have unless this rubric is open knowledge, and I don't know that. Can you tell me?
Yes, Commissioner. So all of the grading rubric would not be, as far as I know, it's not common knowledge. So I would have access to know how all of those would have been evaluated. And so knowing the grading rubric, none of the rubric that was developed, to my understanding, is weighted unevenly, in that one question is not weighted more than another, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that. I suppose my concern is the knowledge of the rubric prior to writing the grant proposal. And then, reading the information here as we look at the standard of conduct, no negative impacts. These are, I believe, your words. No negative impact on the award of any other applicant. But certainly there could be a presumption of a negative impact in if you got one where somebody else would not have, based on the appearance of you knowing how something's going to be graded prior to it being graded that nobody else would have access to, if that makes sense. So maybe if you could speak a little to how you feel that wouldn't violate a standard of conduct or an appearance of conflict.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. My response to that would be that because I knew what the rubric was and the way that the questions were worded as objective questions, they were yes or no, or it does apply or it does not apply. I felt comfortable submitting an application, even knowing the rubric, just because there was no way in that instance for my business to gain an advantage in scoring or in knowledge of how those, you either meet the criteria or you do not meet the criteria. And so I felt comfortable submitting an application in that instance. In regards to favoritism, or I guess the appearance of in what you're saying because of the knowledge that I had, as it currently stands, when I left the process, my understanding was that if my application was funded, it would not displace or negatively impact. And that's, I guess, what I meant by negatively impact any other application. No one will not be funded because my application is funded, if that makes sense. So there's no risk of displacing another application at the acceptance of this one, if that makes sense.
If I might, Mr. Chair, are you done with that line? Can you talk a bit more about the process of building the rubric and approving it? What was your role? Was it specifically to determine, to confirm that the rubric was in compliance with federal standards, or did you play a role in the development of the particular assessments that constitute the rubric?
I was definitely, Commissioner, I was definitely part of the conversations of so my role in that kind of varied. I definitely had input and insight to like how to build a scoring rubric, just because of my expertise and what my role is in grants. So I definitely did advise on how to build a scoring rubric, on potential areas of evaluation, those types of things. However, all of those final decisions were made by mayor's personnel.
Thank you.
Yes.
You may not know the answer to this, but I noticed that part of the grant application form has some language about conflicts of interest. And one specific phrase in there is that the expectation of the standard relative to conflicts of interest precludes, I believe it's applicants from gaining inside information with regard to these activities. That's the phrase, gain inside information with regard to these activities. Do you know what the intent or the meaning of that phrase is in that context?
The way that I interpreted it when I applied was that if I were to have gained inside information that would have granted me a disproportionate advantage to other applicants, that would preclude me from being able to apply due to a conflict of interest.
Thank you. That seems like a reasonable interpretation of that phrase. My concern, and I'm not imputing any intent at all here, please understand that, is that I think a reasonable person might understand that phrase in the way that you've suggested, which I think is probably correct, and understanding your role in the process of the development of that rubric to be precisely that. So I have concerns on those grounds. Again, not making any claims at all about intent. I'm sure that you did not have any intent there, but when it comes to an apparent conflict of interest, I worry about appearances.
Commissioner or Chair, if I may, what was the time frame that the application window was open? How long from the date they called for applications until that window closed?
Mr. Vice Chair, I'm not sure exactly. I want to say I put in some, I think in my narrative, I did include the close date, maybe. I don't remember the date that it went live.
Closed January 31st. Okay. You applied on the 11th of January, but we don't have the date that it opened. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I had on the appearance question, it's written here that back to dates, that you applied for this grant before seeking an advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission. Is that because somebody told you that there is an apparent issue, or why was the reason one came before the other?
Yes, Commissioner. So at the time of the application, I didn't personally see a conflict of interest in that, the way that my duties aligned. When I did feel the necessity to at least let the program manager over the grant know that I was applying, so that the appearance was it didn't appear that I was trying to hide anything or anything like that. And so at that time, it was requested that I at least reach out to legal for their opinion on whether or not they thought that it was also appropriate, at which time I did reach out to legal. They had met about it, so that they don't see an actual conflict, but that it may or may not trigger a apparent conflict, and that they would just suggest reaching out to the Ethics Commission for ultimate clarification.
Thank you. Does any of the commissioners need any more information, or what do you suggest? Is there, like, if you plan to apply for any more grants, is that something that we should look into, or that should come before the committee? Would we like to revisit this and ask more questions later, or get more people, maybe a supervisor in, or what do you think?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just add one thing on the appearance, just to clarify, the reason that I felt that the appearance would be okay, given my knowledge of the scoring rubric, was purely based on the idea that the questions were objective, in that in sort of the instance that you either meet the criteria or you do not, which then would give me, in my mind at the time, would be no disadvantaged or disproportionate advantage in that area.
Mr. Chair, I did have one more question. Thank you for the clarification on that. To a separate question about personal benefit or gain and the appearance of such. You and your wife are the only employees of the company, and you indicated on this that all revenue is returned to business operations. And that may be true right now, but if the business were, of course, to grow exponentially, I could imagine a situation in which that would not be true. And the benefit, of course, is the business, and certainly there are tax benefits and other things that you and your wife, as the the only two people on this business, would benefit from. Could you speak to that maybe?
Yes. So as it plans, as it stands now, we don't have any payroll expenses. All earned revenue from the small business goes back into operations. And that's also the plan. If we were to receive the grant funds, that's also the plan for those grant funds. We're far from being able to expand to payroll expenses. We're just a small business that operates that way. I do see what you mean in the, maybe perhaps years down the road, if it grows exponentially, that there could be payroll costs. However, that's not the intent behind our application for this grant, nor has it been the history of our business.
I agree with Commissioner Church, and there is some, if the business does grow, then how do we get back? How do you plan on submitting another inquiry to the committee, the commissioners, the ethics committee, or how do you plan on dealing with this situation in the future? Because you technically could apply for more grants, and how we know is that's going to cause a conflict of interest, with your particular business, you and your wife's.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. So I think, given future circumstances based on how this was evaluated and obviously based on the outcome of the situation, recusal from the process would become much earlier in future grant applications if that were the case. I think that this situation is sort of unique. The ARPA funding is kind of a unique funding type that just happened to present itself. And so in that instance, we're dealing with the fallout of, the ability to apply for that. I've tried to be as transparent during this process as I can regarding this, and I would plan to do this so in any future applications as well, especially given my position within the city.
And if I may ask, that was a $4,000 grant, if I'm not mistaken?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any cap on grants? I'm not that familiar with applying for grants, or is there any?
There's this particular award, every applicant would receive the same amount, which is $4,000.
One final question for me. Do you know when, or does legal know when these grants would be awarded? Is there a date?
My last involvement in the process, there was not an exact date. They were in the process of business verification. No awards have been made. And so if my business were to be awarded, that would be, what this meeting would be about, was whether or not we should accept the funds. I know that through the verification process, our business has already been contacted by the program just to verify eligibility. And so I know it's at that point, but to my knowledge, none of the awards have been made yet. However, probably within the next 60 days, I would assume that some of those awards will be made.
One final thought from me. I appreciate the fact that the criteria in the rubric were objective, or I'm certainly happy to grant that as a stipulation. And that certainly mitigates my concern about appearances of undue influence to the benefit of your business. But to the extent that you had any role in determining which criteria, appeared in the rubric, I still have concerns about the appearance there.
I'd move to direct staff to draft an advisory opinion on 23-03.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Church,
Aye.
Howarth,
Aye.
King,
Aye.
Rourke,
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you, Joshua.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and on to advisory opinion 23-01. Wildfire safety plans with Mr. McAdams. I guess we were expecting him to be here, or? So we're just going to make a motion to approve.
Unless anybody has any changes.
At the risk of pointing out what I know Commissioner Rourke was going to point out anyway, it looks like we have an errant comment in the second line of the second paragraph.
You stole the phrase I was literally going to use, Luke.
He's just hanging out there with nothing to attach to, and I think he'd rather be deleted.
I know that wasn't a motion, but I would second it if it were. I approve. There are a couple of other editorial remarks here, just because this will appear in the record as our work product. On page 2, fourth paragraph begins, "The commission." Second line, there's an errant left-hand parent. I don't know, is someone looking at this? Because I don't want to jump ahead without Doug, are you taking notes?
Yeah, if you just clarify that one, I'm.
Yes,
Can't
in
find that
reference
one.
to the code section, we have open parent 1-8-3, open parent A close. So there's either a missing right hand parent or the left one shouldn't be there at all, which relates to my other school marmish concerns here. On page 3, section 1, first paragraph therein, the commission analyzed. In the second line there, we've got a reference to a code section, again, 184A, enclosed in parentheses. And then above the block indent below, we have the word section with no parentheses at all. So it's just a stylistic consistency thing. And I'll just continue to apologize, but I recognize it's still annoying. Here I go. On page 4 in section 2, the opening paragraph, the penultimate line has the phrase, he continues to complete separate. I think maybe it's completely separate is what is intended there. So there may be an LY missing. And then last, thankfully, in the big block indent there, in the 8th line, there's a numeral 1 between the words because achieving. And I think that's just a typo, I think, unless it's standing in place of some other words that got deleted somehow. I don't think it is. Thank you.
Those sound like legitimate edits, Commissioner Rourke. So
Mr.
do we-
Vice Chair, can I just clarify your correction?
Fine.
Oh, yeah.
First page, second line. After the word business, there's 2 commas. The
Gotcha.
draft I'm looking at.
Thank you.
The only other question I had, and this maybe goes to the conclusion that we're making from it. So in the opinion section, the top of page 3, requester shall refrain from engaging in any marketing or communication to potential customers for wildfire safety plans within the city of Boise. That could reasonably be construed as using his employment status with the fire department for financial gain for himself or his business. It seems like we're stipulating, jumping from that section to page 4, beginning of the second paragraph here. Well, requester did confirm that his business's website includes references to his employment with the city. They appear to be exclusively in the context of his biography. I guess this section below is helpful in determining that, but I guess I just wanted to make sure that everybody's comfortable with that kind of 4-part test laid out there, that the way that website was worded couldn't be reasonably construed as using his employment status today. I'm not sure of a way you'd do it differently. But just looking at it, I don't think that it would necessarily be unreasonable for someone to draw that conclusion where the city is referenced and it's the same city that they're looking for a plan within the city limits for.
Any thoughts, Commissioner Church?
Vice Chair, I agree with you. I agreed with you when you brought it up at the meeting, and I did have an opportunity afterward to look at the website and felt similarly. I am not sure, though, how, without setting an odd precedent, that your work has to be separated from your side hustle. I hear you, and I'm also conflicted as to how you would change that.
what would the process be for developing some sort of guidelines around that, like consistent with the reference to the social media policy earlier, where, as an example, in my employment, if I post something, it's supposed to say that it's my opinion and my opinion alone and shouldn't be construed as the opinion of my company. Is there a way to address this with something? And I get that this is getting outside the commission's authority, but it would make our ability to make determinations on these issues easier if there were a process outlined that we could identify whether it was followed or not.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Commissioner, I can certainly raise that with the, actually with the head of our employees relation department, who is actually in the room and is spearheading a rewriting the employee handbook as we speak. So that might be a timely comment. As far as the draft goes, I knew you had discussed it, so I wanted to include it, but I wasn't entirely clear on the conclusion that had been reached by the commission. So that's why I drafted it in this form.
To be fair, I'm not sure I'm entirely clear on the conclusion that I've reached from it. And I think that's where some sort of outside guidance would be helpful with that. And I'm also sorry that you're having to rewrite your handbook. I just got done with that and it's awful.
Mr. Chair, I certainly appreciate and share your concern. I mean, it certainly feels like this is a matter of degrees rather than anything that's clear cut. And it would be, I think, unreasonable. I don't know if this is what you were thinking. It seems like it would be unreasonable to redact the name of the city or to replace it with some generic descriptor, right? A significant municipality in the state of Idaho, right? That just doesn't seem reasonable. So it seems as though one approach might be to have some sort of counteracting language like you've suggested, right? That makes it very clear that the reference to the city is, it's incidental, it's historical. It is not intended to convey any kind of approval or sanctioning or endorsement on the part of the city. And I wonder if including some language in the opinion that makes it very clear that our opinion is conditioned on any future imposition of such requirements. I mean, that it goes without saying, right? If it's a requirement that's required, but that I think might allay some of our concerns, because if there is something forthcoming that requires that kind of use of counteracting language, right? This is not an endorsement on the part of the city. This is not, right? Then that would help.
Are we able, or do we have the authority to? Do you have any more on that, Sarah?
While HR is coming up, I would just second that. And to your point that it would certainly help this commission, as one of the two advisory reports that we have been talking about today also dealt with the exact same thing. So just add that point.
Commissioners, we do have a policy in place on social media specifically to what Vice Chair Howard spoke with. There, you do have to put a disclaimer on your personal social media. And unfortunately, I am not familiar with the advisory opinion you're talking about right now, so I can't really comment on that. But I will work with Doug and take that into consideration while we are working through the employee handbook.
Yeah, no, the only difference here is that it's not a social media page, it's a business website.
Okay.
That he's using. So there's a ton of overlap between that and social media for any, I mean, I think it was said earlier today that that's one of the best ways you can reach people with anything. And with his business, I'm sure he's utilizing social media as well. But I do think it's sort of the Commissioner Rourke's suggestion sort of fits in nicely with condition 3 on this opinion, that the approval is limited to him remaining in his current position with his current responsibilities. And if he changes, he needs to seek a subsequent opinion. It's the same thing, that if the landscape changes, he needs to make sure he's in compliance with it. in order for this opinion to remain effective as to his situation.
I'd like to make a motion. I move that the draft opinion be revised to include some language. I'm not exactly sure where, that stipulates that there be an explicit disclaimer on his biography page with an asterisk next to the name of the city and a note at the bottom that says that it doesn't constitute an endorsement on the part of the city or something of that nature.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, just roughly while you were talking, I penciled something out in number 2, condition number 2 on page 3, the proposed condition number 2 to, in the opinion, to add a sentence directing the requester to put a disclaimer in his biography section that indicates that the reference to Boise does not constitute an endorsement of his services by the city. And that I think that connects back with that last sentence on the last page,
So moved.
if that's acceptable.
Yeah, one of the other activities I think that he mentioned being involved in with this personal business is giving presentations at conferences and events. Would there be a requirement of the same, to the extent anyone in the audience could be someone from within the city of Boise limits, or yeah, I guess, would there be a requirement that that language be placed on any presentation as well?
I can add that.
Okay.
I kind of feel like there's a lot unsaid. I don't know if those comments make me feel comfortable. But if we can add a disclaimer, I'd feel a lot better.
Mr. Chair, and I mean, the disclaimer, I think is important. I also think the language that Commissioner Rourke brought up, that if the city of Boise were to change the language regarding what is required, that this individual or any individual would need to come back or would need to be in compliance in the future, just to allow us the opportunity to revisit this if after all is said and done, there are certain stipulations beyond that the city has decided to take.
I agree. I think that's the most important piece. Can we do that, Sarah?
Yes, we will definitely look into that.
A point of order, if I might, Mr. Chairman. I think we have 2 motions before us, and I think to approve it, we'll need a second and go through the full rigmarole.
I entertain a motion.
I move to add the language regarding disclaimers in reference to the city of Boise in the biography, as Doug did such a nice job of stating.
I'd second.
Roll call vote.
Church,
Aye.
Howarth.
Aye.
King,
Aye.
Rourke.
Aye.
Zimmerman. All in favor, motion carries.
I would then motion for the addition of language regarding future changes to the employee handbook and being in compliance and coming back if out of compliance at that time.
I
Second the
agree.
motion.
Entertain a motion. Roll call vote.
Church,
Aye.
Howarth.
Aye.
King,
Aye.
Rourke.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you, clerk. If there isn't any other business, should we entertain a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Second the motion.
Roll call vote.
Church,
Aye.
Howarth.
Aye.
King,
Aye.
Rourke.
Aye.
Zimmerman.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
This meeting is adjourned.